Hello and welcome to my review for Black Panther, the 18th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and a film that came out 2 months ago. Yeah. So the thing was, I went to see Black Panther when it came out in February, I believe, in 4DX, and I did a kind of brief thoughts video with my brother Tommy, which was a lot of fun, and it was great taking him to go and see it, and to see it in this big, larger-than-life 4DX format, which isn't my preferred first viewing of any film. Based on my very modest experience with 4DX, it's great for big, kind of blockbuster movies, but if you want something that has a bit more nuance and emotional moments and character-driven stuff, which I think Black Panther does, at least for me, you kind of lose a little bit of that. And added to the fact that when I went to see it with my brother, 4DX, there was a whole row behind us talking throughout the entire movie. There are multiple scenes in Black Panther where characters are talking very seriously about emotional things, and you know, there's not much music, if any, there's not much sound effects, if any. It's just these characters and speaking in their words, and all I'm hearing is these people behind me, just chatting, laughing, snickering, kind of just going about their day, basically, and not really paying attention to what was going on the screen. They spent a premium to go in and see 4DX and just wanted to, you know, have a chat. They treated it as their own restaurant, you know, eating loudly, and, you know, anyway, so by the end of the film, you know, 2 hours and 10 minutes deep, the emotional climax of the film, again, two characters, and just dialogue, and, you know, oh yeah, da, 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 da. So I couldn't really engage with a lot of that stuff, even though I recognised how strong the acting was, and I appreciated where it was going from a story perspective. So I wanted to go and see Black Panther again, on my own. Not that my brother was a distraction or anything, but, you know, to maybe go in the morning or something, and just fully engage with it. Never had the time, you know, 2 hours and 10 minutes, I just was like, well, I'd rather see this other film that's out. You know, I very much go to my you know, my normal mindset when it comes to watching films, which is, why watch a film I've already seen when I can spend that time watching something I've never seen before? So that was kind of the thinking, and so I never got around to seeing it again, even though it's still showing multiple times a day. We're 2 months out from the release, and Infinity War is out tomorrow for me, right now when I'm filming this video, and even this Friday, a couple of days after, or I guess the day after, Infinity War opens wide everywhere. You know, you look at the cinema list and it's like Infinity War all the way down the list, but then Black Panther. I mean, they're really trying to rack up that overall lifetime gross. I think it's hit $1.3 billion worldwide, which is just incredible and awesome, I think, because I loved the film despite the distractions. And so I'm just going to talk about it, and it's still, after 2 months, is really fresh in my mind, and I think that it's one of my favorite films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I can go into the plot and talk about how Black Panther, as we have met him in a previous film, Captain America Civil War, T'Challa, played by Chadwick Boseman, who is the heir to the throne, to the Kingdom of Wakanda, a fictional kingdom in Africa, which is technologically advanced. And, you know, everyone's seen Black Panther. It's almost redundant to do this. It's just kind of a little bit of housekeeping and, you know, setting things up, I suppose. And in Civil War, of course, T'Challa's father, T'Chaka, I believe was his name, who was the first Black Panther. Or at least I think he was the first. Again, I'm maybe a little bit hazy on some of the details, because, again, there's a lot of story, and it's a really good story in Black Panther. I loved the opening sequence that kind of set up the history of a meteorite hitting Earth, and it landed in Africa. Vibranium was there, and that's what gives them all this incredible technology and stuff. So I love how it really sets the table for this vibranium, and how it all ties into the whole Marvel Cinematic. I just love how everything is really just coalescing into this kind of end point, it seems, with the next two Avengers movies. But regardless, we have T'Challa trying to take on the mantle of being the king of Wakanda and being Black Panther. And just as an aside, again, you know, to go back to Civil War, being introduced to Black Panther, and so many of these Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, you know, I'd never heard of Ant-Man before, I'd never heard of Guardians of the Galaxy. Black Panther, I'd never heard of him before. I know that Wesley Snipes was trying to make a Black Panther film back in the 90s. He really wanted to see African Americans get portrayed in a more positive light. And someone brought up a reviewer that I watch actually, Terrell Graham, does some really good reviews, and he was saying that for him, seeing all black casts in movies, it's usually about slavery or oppression, and it really is true. So that's another thing about Black Panther that cannot be ignored, and I don't think can ever really be overstated, is just how culturally, important it is. This all black cast, for the most part, and it's such a celebration of the culture. That's one of my favorite things of the film, was how, and not just because it was a celebration of the culture, but because that was different. It was just a different flavor, the way that the kind of African culture was weaved into the Wakandan culture, and how it was told through that lens of, this unseen world, and all the technological advancements that came with Wakanda, but also kind of the tribal feeling, the chanting, and the kind of the rituals. I loved all that stuff. It was just something different, something new, something that in this age of superhero movies, and as much as I love the Marvel films, they do get repetitive, and we do follow the same kind of plot points. And again, Black Panther, if you break down the plot, the story, it's nothing we haven't seen before. You can look at films like Lion King and others where we see similar themes and stuff. Not that I'm one of those, oh, it's just a Lion King remake, because it's not, but the story isn't anything revolutionary, but it's just the framing of the story, and who occupies the story. That makes it stand out, makes it different, makes it feel fresh. It balances the humor really well. I thought it didn't really lean into it too much, which I really liked. It really dealt with this core storyline of T'Challa trying to deal with being the king of Wakanda, taking on that mantle, taking on that responsibility, and kind of taking on challenges, and us seeing the kind of rituals again where someone will come forth and challenge the right to the throne, and they got to fight to the death, basically, or fight until a person wins. And the honor in that is really integral to the film. And then we have the villain played by Michael B. Jordan. I remember back in, I think, 2002, 2011, when Chronicle came out, and he exuded such a charisma on screen. I was like, this guy's going to be something. I think I said it at the time, and he was the standout of the film to me. And then we see him now, and he's done some great films, Fruitvale Station and Creed. I thought he was great in, and he's fantastic in this film. I do feel like his status as a villain in the film maybe has been glorified a little bit too much. People saying, he wasn't even a villain, he was right, I empathize with him. And I guess I did empathize with Killmonger to a certain degree. This guy has really had his life twisted and contorted by the hand that he was dealt, and his backstory. I won't go into everything and all the plot points, but you can see why he became what he became, and why he wanted to take over the throne of Wakanda, and his point to show the world Wakanda and say, let's show them what we have, what we can do, that kind of thing. It wasn't this big fight at the end so he could take them to war. But at the same time, he was kind of an evil bastard who killed people. So I can't, completely side with, oh, he was the good one or whatever. I think people kind of put him on a pedestal a little bit. But Michael B. Jordan plays him with such charisma, with such weight, but also that there's a word for that. This is slipping my mind at the moment. He plays that role of Killmonger with a chip on his shoulder, I guess is the best way to put it. You really feel like he has something to prove to everyone and to himself, and he totally believes in everything that he's doing, and that makes one hell of a compelling antagonist for the main hero of your story. And I loved all the side characters. In fact, my favorite thing about the whole film was T'Challa's sister, Shuri. I just thought she was so much fun. She's kind of the cue to Black Panther's James Bond. That's another film this film's a little bit like is the James Bond series. There's kind of the international flavor to it. There's an incredible action sequence in South Korea, which again plays out like a spy movie. Then you got the big action set piece, and Andy Serkis reprising his role from Age of Ultron as Claw. Andy Serkis, to me, he's one of the great actors of this generation. He just, every time you see him, he's doing something different, and it doesn't feel like someone who's trying to be different. He just really becomes the role, I almost feel like if we didn't know he was Snoke in Last Jedi, that we wouldn't know it was him, because he's so distinctive, but in different ways, You can tell when some actors are kind of changing their voice a little bit and it still sounds like them, or like another role they did. Andy Serkis, he just disappears into every role he does. It's always different. For the most part, I mean, I'm sure there's other films he's done, but you know, in this he's just great as this South African kind of mercenary arms dealer, and he's so funny in the film, and it brings such an interesting flavor to the film as well, because he's a character who's mean, he's intimidating, but he's also really funny, and so he's such an entertaining kind of side villain, and I really enjoyed him in the film. Martin Freeman coming back also from Civil War, and he kind of brings some of his very unique comedic timing to the film, doing it in an American accent, which is always weird for me with Martin Freeman. For some reason, I can never quite buy him with an American accent, even though he does it almost impeccably. So I liked his part in the film. I just liked Wakanda. You know, I feel like there's so much untapped potential in the visual of Wakanda as a nation. You know, the city. We've only seen glimpses of it. You know, really. But I like how we saw different kind of parts of it, like the city itself, and then also the plains. You know, the more kind of the natural habitat, but also up in the mountains where it's snowy and stuff. I really like that, and also the waterfall location. So you really get to see all these different kind of varying landscapes of colours and climates and all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was really cool and gave the film a moving presence with going from location to location. Even if we are staying in Wakanda, we can go to different areas with, again, just different feelings and stuff to the tone of the surroundings and the elements and things. Yeah, and Shuri, I just really loved her performance. She was, and how kind of switched on she is, how technological and clever and smart she is, but also how enthusiastic and kind of fun she is as well. She really feels like a little sister, and I have a little sister who's very enthusiastic and stuff, and so I could almost imagine in some kind of weird, kind of distant, maybe multiverse or something, that she would be something like this if she was really clever with science and stuff, and how eager she'd be. That kind of was something that I really connected with, and I find myself now being really hopeful for a scene in the next Avengers movie with Shuri either kind of doing some kind of technological trade-off with Bruce Banner or Tony Stark, where she manages to do something that even they haven't figured out yet. Something like that I think would be so much fun to see. But anyway, I really loved her character, and there's other, again, I feel like the supporting characters are really well done. I forget the guy's name. He was in Get Out. I really liked his character. He's a very small part in the film. Not small, but medium. But I just liked where he stood and everything. It just feels like a very well written and put together film from all the different characters and where they're going and where they're heading, and how kind of alliances break apart and kind of maybe reassemble in maybe a different order than they were before. And by the end of the film, when we have this kind of big climax, we have Killmonger and T'Challa fighting it out, duking it out like a good hero and villain should. But I found myself, when we were cutting away from that kind of mano-a-mano fight on the subway to the surface of Wakanda, and everyone's fighting there on the kind of plains, I was so much more invested in that fight than I was the T'Challa and Killmonger fight. For some reason, I don't know what it was. So again, Wakanda really just sold me. I loved the feeling of it, and again, as I said, it can't be overstated how important this film is, from presenting this all-black cast in a multi-million-dollar budget blockbuster movie. It's just something different, much like Wonder Woman was last year. It's just representing more flavors and more diversity. And again, it's sad that just me saying that opens me up for people going, oh, look at this, trying to be politically correct and all that. No, it's just nice to see something different as far as I'm concerned, but it is also important to see different things and to make progress. And can it go too far in one direction? Maybe it can, arguably, but so what if it does? Who cares, really? It's good movies are being made. It doesn't really matter who's making them, but everyone should really get a fair shot at it. And I think that they proved with this film that it's just anyone can do it, really. People who have talent are people who have talent, and that's all that matters. But yeah, apart from that, again, that's something I need to comment on. But just as a film, an entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is one that I had so much fun with, but really could tell was done so well from a story point where it had those emotions, but again, I couldn't really fully connect to them because of the whole bad cinema experience. but I recognize how good the acting was, and I really want to see it again and just fully commit my attention to it and get into those emotions. And if I do, it could end up being in my like top, 3, Marvel films. As of right now, I think it's in my top 5. I just again, something different. It was such a breath of fresh air. That's the main thing that comes to mind when I think of a Black Panther, is breath of fresh air. Love the action. There wasn't too much of it. It didn't try and do this ridiculous action sequence that was far overblown or anything like that. And it kept things personal. Especially when you go to those flashbacks in the 90s in California. I liked how that played into it. That was very well done, both in the beginning and the end of the film. There's other kind of flashbacky elements that I quite like too, but I'm just rambling at this point. But I think that Black Panther is a really strong entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As far as 2018 films, it's in my top 20. It's not really anywhere near close breaking the top 10 or anything, but such an enjoyable film. And as far as Marvel goes, they just continue to make great, fun blockbuster films in this kind of superhero fatigue era where a lot of people are starting to lean into that. Oh, it's just a machine and all this, and it's just a production line. Make the next thing, make more money. And I don't know. I'm seeing these films and I'm getting moved by parts of them, as well as being enjoyed. I'll leave that one in for free. But being entertained and enjoying the films, as well as as the emotions. I feel like some of them have something to say, and also have so much to offer in terms of just popcorn, action, fun, entertainment. You look at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, even though you look at the whole film maybe, but the ending of that film is such a gut punch, and there's something so beautiful about what they told in that story. So I think these films, that they really do have something, and it's not even a Marvel versus DC thing. I just think Marvel have really they figured something out, and it's probably gonna end at some point. But right now they're riding this high. And I can only really imagine that Black Panther to Infinity War has got to be the biggest 1-2 punch consecutively from a movie studio probably ever. I mean, I can't imagine a world where Infinity War doesn't break 1 billion worldwide. So that's kind of, in 2 months. That's going to be pretty interesting and intense. Anyway, my very long review of Black Panther. I don't feel like I didn't even get into some of the other things I really liked. There's just so much to talk about with this film. Lupita Nyong'o's character, wasn't really huge to the plot, but I liked her place in the story and her performance. And Michonne from The Walking Dead, she was a great character. I've forgotten her character's name off the top of my head. It has been 2 months, but there you go. Probably more I could go into, but I'll leave it there. Thank you for watching. If you have, I mean, at this point it's so out of date. Who's even going to watch this? I don't know, but I felt like I needed to keep up with my unrealistic goal of making a video review of every film I see in 2018. So there we go. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you.